Welcome back, everybody, to another week of Sunday School here at the Lighthouse Church of the Nazarene in Moravia, Iowa, where we are going through the book of Isaiah. This week, we're in Isaiah chapter 20. Now, we've learned so far that Isaiah prophesied during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah from 739 BC to 686 BC. Now, what important prophecies did Isaiah have? Well, he foretold the virgin birth of Jesus Christ. We find that in Isaiah chapter 7. Isaiah foretold the family lineage of Jesus. It's the Davidic covenant, and we found that in Isaiah chapter 11. He says, out of the root of Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. Jesus came from the lineage of King David. Isaiah, he also foretold the destruction of Babylon, and he said Babylon will cease from being a city, and to this day it has. Isaiah has also foretold events that haven't even happened yet. Remember, in Isaiah 17, he said Damascus will cease from being a city. Well, guess what? Damascus is still a city. It's the oldest city. So we have a prophecy of Isaiah that has not been fulfilled yet, but it will be guaranteed. If it's in the Bible, it's true. Let's see. Isaiah also foretold just last week that the Nile River would run dry. And guess what? It hasn't ran dry before. So we know that prophecy is still out there waiting to be fulfilled. So last week we looked at the judgments against Egypt. This week in chapter 20, we just get short 6-verse chapter. It's one of the shortest chapters in the Bible. In Isaiah, we have chapter 4 and chapter 12 that also both have just 6 verses. So short 6-verse chapter here. Shouldn't take long to get through. So let's just get out our Bibles. Let's follow along. We're in Isaiah chapter 20, verse 1. And it says, in the year that Tartan came to Ashdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, that he fought against Ashdod and took it. All right, we'll just stop right there real quick. Ashdod was one of the 5 Philistine cities. 5 Philistine cities. We find them all throughout the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel. They were Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gaza, and Gath. So this is a Philistine city. The Philistines are still around at this time. In fact, it wasn't until the Babylonian conquest in 586 BC that the Philistines were then defeated and they were assimilated into the population. And that's when the Philistines lost their identity during the Babylonian conquest there. So this is a Philistine city right here. So in the year that Tartan came to Ashdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him. Now, Sargon, it's actually Sargon II, and this is the only place in the Bible that he is mentioned by name. Sargon, right here. We do read about him. It's in 2 Kings chapter 17, but he's just referred to as the king of Assyria. Right here is the only place in the Bible that he's referred to by name as Sargon. We also have this in the year that Tartan. Who is Tartan? We don't know. Tartan is actually a title, like commander-in-chief. So we don't know who that is. So in the year that Tartan came to Ashdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, and he fought against Ashdod and took it, at the same time. So it says, at the time that this stuff happened. Now, we know exactly when the Assyrians came and took Ashdod. They say it was 711 BC. So they know exactly when this happened right here. But think about this. Ashdod, it's still a city today. It's only 50 miles from Jerusalem. So the Assyrians came, took a town that's only 50 miles from Jerusalem. Do you know what the people of Judah had to be thinking about at that time? They were probably saying, oh no, where next? That's what is going through their mind. So verse 2, now listen to this. At the same time, the Lord spoke by Isaiah, the son of Amoz, saying, go and remove the sackcloth from your body and take your sandals off your feet. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. So, you want to be a prophet? You want to be used by God? God asks his followers to do some hard things, does he not? Let's look through the Bible a little bit. The prophet Hosea, what did God tell him to do? God told Hosea to go and marry a harlot, an unfaithful woman. And that was a picture of the Israelites to God. God's saying, you guys aren't being faithful to me. So Hosea, he was told to marry a harlot, an unfaithful woman. Let's look at the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel had to lay on his side for 390 days. Also, Ezekiel, God took his wife away from him and told him, you are not to mourn this. God asked his people to do some hard things. The prophet Jeremiah, he had a ministry, and God even told him, these people aren't going to listen to you. God also told Jeremiah, he says, hey, don't take a wife, don't get married. Jeremiah is the only person in the Bible that God told don't take a wife. Now, why did God tell Jeremiah to not take a wife? Because he knew that doom and destruction were coming upon Jerusalem, and it would save him the agony of watching his wife and children go through the punishment also. So God has asked his prophets, his people, his followers to do some hard things. Remember the Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus. What did God say? I must show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake. But what did God tell Isaiah, the great prophet, to do right here? Told him to strip down and go naked and barefoot. He's going to do it for 3 years. I wonder if Isaiah counted the cost. Remember the calling of Isaiah? It's in Isaiah chapter 6 when God says, who will we send and who will go for us? And what did Isaiah say? He said, here I am, send me right here. Do you think he counted the cost? Do you think he would have said that if God was like, all right, I'm going to ask you to go naked and barefoot for 3 years? We all have to count the cost to follow Christ. We have to be willing to forsake all. Jesus talked about this. It's in Luke chapter 14. He says, what man building a building does not sit down first and count the cost to see if he can finish it? What king going to war does not sit down first and make a plan and see if he can finish the war with his 10,000 soldiers? We all have to be prepared for whatever God asks us to do. All right, so God told Isaiah, strip down, go naked and barefoot. Now, why? Why did God tell Isaiah to do this? Well, it was a living parable. It was a visual aid. Kind of like, let's see, what did Ezekiel have to do? God told Ezekiel to build a model city of Jerusalem, and then he took it with a pan and just started smashing it. It was a living parable. He was acting it out. I guess you could say in the same way, Hosea was a living parable, acting it out. So right here, this is a living parable where Isaiah is acting it out. Now we have to ask ourselves, well, why is he walking around naked and barefoot? What is he signifying here? What he is signifying is that both Egypt and Ethiopia will be captured by the Assyrians and will be led away naked. I believe it'd be a trip of 900 miles or so when they captured him. Now, the Assyrians, they were the ruthless world power. They were the world empire at that time. And when they captured you, it was not good. What would they do? They would put you in bronze fetters, handcuffs, and they would actually pierce you and put hooks in you, either in your nose, in your lips, or in your ears. And they actually have carvings, relief pictures of this. So they know that the Assyrians did this. And then they would strip you naked and lead you away naked. It was a public humiliation, a public shame. In the same way, we always see pictures of Jesus on a cross wearing a loincloth. Most likely, Jesus was naked on that cross when he was being crucified, because that's what crucifixion was. It was horrible torture, but it was also public shame and humiliation. This is them. They're going to be publicly shamed and humiliated, stripped away naked, and sent back to Assyria. Now, we also have to ask ourselves this. Was Isaiah really walking around completely naked? Well, people debate this. Some people would say, well, God would never ask one of his prophets to walk around completely naked. Some say, well, he just had to shed his mantle. Remember Elijah, how he threw his mantle onto Elisha when he gave him his calling? Some people say, well, he just stripped off his mantle that signified he was a prophet. Now, some say he just took off his outer garments and would have been wearing a tunic underneath. Or some say, well, maybe he was just walking around with his buttocks exposed. Do you remember that? It's in 2 Samuel chapter 10, where some people capture King David's men and they shave off half their beards and cut off their tunics so that their buttocks are exposed. Some people say he was just doing that, maybe walking around with his buttocks exposed. All we know is this, that the Hebrew word right here that says naked, it means nude. It means naked. So Isaiah very well could have been walking around completely nude and completely naked, doing what God told him to do. All right, let's go to verse 3 right here. Then the Lord said, just as my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot for 3 years. How long did he do it for? For 3 years. 3 years is a long time. Now we have to ask ourselves, did he do this all day, every day for 3 years? Did he just do it at certain times of the day during these 3 years? We don't know. All we know is that he had to do it for 3 years. But we do know this. It does get cold in Jerusalem. It does snow at times in Jerusalem. So it's not like he's walking around in a constantly warm climate. It does get cold. This goes against every saying that people have. Well, God just wants what's best for you. God just can't wait to shower blessings of riches and ease on you. God just wants you to be happy. Isaiah was a great prophet. Isaiah was a man of God, and God asked him to do hard things. Another thing I'd like to talk about in this one we're talking about here. So the Lord said, just as my servant Isaiah had walked naked and barefoot for 3 years for a sign and a wonder against Egypt and Ethiopia. Remember, Isaiah was brought up in the palace. Isaiah was brought up in a place of privilege. If you remember, Isaiah was the son of a man named Amoz. It said it right here in this chapter. Amoz was the brother of King Amaziah, who then Amaziah then had Uzziah. So Isaiah and Uzziah, they were cousins. So Isaiah, he was brought up in the palace. He had a place of prominence. He had a place of royalty. He would have been highly educated. He would have come from a wealthy family. Isaiah would have had a life of prestige, wealth. I guess you could say he'd be one of those who would have been born with a silver spoon in his mouth. So Isaiah, what did he do? He lived up here. He was one of the elites. He still humbled himself and stripped everything down. How many rich, prominent people would be willing to humble themselves like that for the Lord? One thing we have to ask ourselves, is it all worth it? Of course it'll all be worth it. What is that hymn? It'll all be worth it in the end when we see Jesus. D.L. Moody, he had a saying, only one life which will soon be past, only the things done for the Lord will last. Naked we come into this world, we spend all this time on this world trying to accomplish things, and what do? We leave with nothing. We need to remember that. So Isaiah, he lived a life of prestige. And he could have stayed in there, but he went and followed God. We got to remember, Moses did the same thing. But Moses was brought up in the palace of Pharaoh, and it says that he could have stayed in that place. But instead of enjoying the passing pleasures of sin, he chose to suffer with his people. There was an American missionary. His name was William Borden. He was born into a wealthy family that his family owned silver mines. He had a trust fund that had him set up for life. But do you know what he did with all his wealth? Gave it all away to missions and went and served the Lord. He actually died at the young age of 26, I believe, from meningitis. But do you know what he said at the end of his life? No regrets. None at all. All right. Most biblical prophets, if we think about this, they lived lonely, isolated lives. They would be living their normal life, and then that normal life would get interrupted for God's calling. You remember Elisha? What was Elisha doing? He was out plowing with oxen. When Elijah came up and interrupted his life, put the calling of God on him, what did Elisha do? Burned everything right there and went and followed the Lord. You know, a lot of these prophets, these men of God, they even wanted to quit. Jeremiah, if you look it up, it's Jeremiah 20, verse 9. Jeremiah said, I will make no more mentions of his name anymore. But then guess what? He couldn't. He said it was like rottenness of his bones, and he couldn't keep quiet. Moses, what did Moses tell God? He said, just kill me now. Elijah, after defeating the 450 prophets of Baal, what did he tell God? He then went and hid in the mountains and said, it's enough. Just take me now. So even these great men of God, the biblical prophets, they got weary and worn down and just couldn't wait to go stand before the Lord and get to their eternal home. So Isaiah had to walk naked and barefoot for 3 years. One of the toughest assignments that we find in the Bible. So verse 4, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians as prisoners and the Ethiopians as captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. So that's telling us why Isaiah was walking around naked and barefoot. It was a picture of what the king of Assyria is going to do to both Egypt and Ethiopia. Verse 5, then they shall be afraid. Who is they right here? Then they shall be afraid. Well, it has to be Judah, because they're trying to decide who should they make an alliance with. And guess what? Neither Egypt nor Ethiopia are going to be any good to make an alliance with, because guess what? The Assyrians are going to defeat both of those people. Verse 5, then they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation in Egypt, their glory. Isaiah is saying, don't put your trust in either Egypt or Ethiopia. It'll do you no good. Verse 6, and the inhabitant of this territory will say in that day, surely such is our expectation wherever we flee for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. God is telling them, hey, you look to me and me alone for help and no others. We have to remember this. Wherever we put our hope in, whatever we put our hope in, if it's not centered on God, it'll let us down. Man will fail. God cannot fail. All our expectations need to be centered on him. Remember, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths great. Put all your trust in God. Everything else we put our trust in, it'll fail. And then chapter 6 ends with this great saying right here. How shall we escape? This is, of course, talking about how are we going to escape from the Assyrians. But we see this phrase throughout the Bible quite a bit, this how shall we escape? Romans 2:3 says this, how shall we escape the judgment of God? Hebrews 2:3 says, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great a salvation? That's a great question. How are we going to escape the judgment of God? It's through Jesus Christ and through Jesus Christ alone. That's the answer. Romans 8:1 says, therefore there is now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. All right. We're done with Isaiah chapter 20. Isaiah had to walk naked and barefoot for 3 years. That's the gist of it. Next week, we're going to be right into chapter 21. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you learned something. And I'll see you the same time, same place next week. Bye.